Over 50 years later, Led Zeppelin IV is still the album that refuses to get old. A record of secrets, urban legends, and stairways. So let's celebrate with 10 things you probably didn't know about it. Number 1. The final mix is wrong. You love the sound of the album, right? Or what if I told you it's not what the band had in mind? Recording sessions wrapped up in early February. Led Zeppelin II and III had been both mixed in the US, so Jimmy Page followed the known playbook, fly to America, but this time try a different facility, Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood, and use their state-of-the-art mixing gear to unlock a new level in sonic architecture. The studio had already seen The Doors' debut and several of Zappa's finest records. Page enjoyed his February days in LA, and after many sessions, the mixes were done. Everything sounded fabulous. Guitar layering, power, dynamics, a monumental statement. Then he flew home back to England to play the results for the band. Everyone was shocked. The long-awaited tapes sounded muddy and cluttered. Page was lost for words. Maybe the monitors in LA painted a different picture, or maybe the tape transfers distorted the mix. They couldn't determine what happened. Either way, they had to scrap an April-May release while Page remixed the entire record from scratch, all while touring on and off. You can check the 2014 deluxe edition of the album for precious bonus tracks, including a surviving LA mix for Stairway, plus alternate mixes that prove how the final product did sound a bit compressed without the brightness they originally went for. The final version of Zeppelin IV was finished until October 1971. Still, it wasn't what they wanted, and this delayed the marketing push. No recording photos exist. The album was tracked between Island Studios in London and Hetley Grange, but there's almost nothing to prove it visually. There's a short film outside Hetley, but that's it. No shots of the band inside, no microphones, no amps, no glimpse of Bonham behind the kit or Page's guitars. Not even the master tapes, unlike the other Zepp albums. Nothing. It feeds the myth, Jimmy Page the perfectionist producer, guarding his methods like alchemy. But in truth, Zeppelin were moving too damn fast to stop for photos. They weren't posing for history, they were making it. Page didn't even use his famous Gibson double neck on the album because he got this after recording Zeppelin IV. The 12-string parts came from a Fender guitar, and that soaring Stairway solo was cut on a Telecaster. It would be nice to have video of John Bonham recording his famous drums for When the Levee Breaks, right? Number 3. There's a fan theory about hidden session musicians. What's rock and roll without a conspiracy theory, right? Some paranoid fans believe there were uncredited players on Zeppelin IV. Their first clue? The original pressings had almost zero info, just song titles, a guest vocal by Sandy Denny, even Ian Stewart's piano part on Rock and Roll went unmentioned. For some, that silence screamed cover-up. But if that logic held, Zeppelin II and III would be under the same microscope. They didn't list personnel either. Then there's the sound of Stairway to Heaven. The acoustic tone on the intro is unlike anything Page had shown before. Almost classical, almost too perfect. Some claim a classical guitarist was involved. The fact Jimmy's barely ever performed that intro on acoustic outside of a 1994 Japanese show only fuels the myth. The theory goes that when Page mixed the album at Sunset Sound in LA, he allegedly brought in studio cats to add polish. But the truth's far simpler. Page had evolved. The meticulous overdubs, it was the band at their prime. But these theories just come across as people who can't handle the fact that Zeppelin were that good. I say this theory is full of Number 4. Album sessions began with no quarter. Yes, the iconic mystery track from Houses of the Holy was first tried out in November 1970 as they sorted through the new material. They decided to save it for later. Also on the drawing board for the sessions were future Physical Graffiti outtakes, Down by the Seaside, Boogie with Stu, and Night Flight. Inspiration struck while they were working, and coming up with a final track selection was a matter of finding the right balance. Number 5. The album artwork hides a creepy surprise. When I worked on my Making of Led Zeppelin IV series, There was a dear subscriber who brought this to my attention, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Take both the album front cover and gatefold, apply a mirror effect, and you'll find images that of course spark much controversy due to Stairway to Heaven's alleged backmasking messages. While this may just be a design coincidence, it's somewhat disturbing considering their previous artwork was much more friendly in that regard. Maybe they took the reviews of Led Zeppelin III to heart and wanted to freak out critics. This album started a trend of featured Zeppelin covers, bringing more questions than answers, thus underlining the mystery behind their empire. Number 6. Some songs were performed live months before the album's release. Where most bands play new cuts just in time for record stores to carry their brand new offering, Led Zeppelin's way of doing things for the fourth album was just weird. Black Dog, Rock and Roll and Stairway made its live debut on March 5th in Belfast, Ireland, and never looked back. They were played at every show after that. Based on these setlists, you can tell they expected the album to be ready by April. So you had a band using precious new material and yet the album was nowhere to be bought. Okay, so then they hit the US market August through September and still no album, despite playing some of the finest shows of their career. But then it was their first ever visit to Japan, and again, no album. Finally, just as they began their UK tour, hello album. Yes, people loved it, but the effect was somewhat of a lost opportunity. Led Zeppelin II and III were effectively released in the middle and right after touring, and guess what? Those peaked at number 1 on Billboard's 200 in 1970. Number 7. It wasn't their best-selling album of 1971 or 1972. Releasing Led Zeppelin IV on November 8th meant it landed in the middle of an all-time heavyweight Billboard chart lineup. All Things Must Pass, Jesus Christ Superstar, Pearl, Sticky Fingers, and Carole King's Tapestry. This ruled number 1 for 15 weeks. You also had Imagine, Shaft, and Santana 3. Zeppelin still hit the top 10 that December, but the fight was brutal. In 1972, singles like Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Misty Mountain Hop, and even the 8-minute Stairway to Heaven hit radio stations, yet none reached number 1. It took months for them to warm up on the airwaves, despite the band's non-stop touring and the mysterious symbols. The year-end Billboard chart for number 1 albums in 72 still favored other names in the business. American Pie, Harvest, Exile on Main Street, Honky Chateau, Chicago 5, Superfly, Catch Bull at 4, and the Moody Blues' nowadays underrated Seventh Sojourn. What's fascinating is how many of those records chased the same acoustic rock sound that Zeppelin turned to gold on Untitled. Number 8. The symbols vanished after 1972. You'd think after all the mystery around the 4 symbols that made 4 legendary, the band would carry them forward as their identity, but they didn't. By mid-1972, Plant and Jones's symbols started to quietly disappear as they never found a practical and musical use for them on stage. It worked for Bonzo's bass drum and Jimmy's amp, thus why they carried these through 1973 and 1975. Jimmy kept his Zozo symbol all the way through 1977 and 1979, plus he wore a hermit outfit on the band's movie. It seems Page was the most interested in keeping Led Zeppelin's 4 lure alive. Number 9. Some songs were premiered after the album's release. When the Levee Breaks, the thunderous closer didn't make its live debut until 1975, 4 long years after its release, and only for a brief period. It happened while Robert Plant was battling vocal problems and Jimmy Page was playing through a broken finger. Because the 75 setlist already featured the slide-driven In My Time of Dying, when the Levee Breaks finally got its chance. But recreating that studio magic live was nearly impossible. The layered drums, the harmonica, the echo, it just couldn't be done. So after 1975, they dropped it for good. Then came the Battle of Evermore. It surfaced years later at the 1976-1977 Manticore rehearsals. No Sandy Denny this time, instead, John Paul Jones took on both the acoustic guitar and the harmony vocals. One of the album's most mystical songs was suddenly stripped bare. Some fans still debate whether it worked, but for my money, Jones held his own when it mattered. Number 10. It wouldn't stay dead on the charts. Led Zeppelin IV entered the Billboard charts on November 27, 1971, and finally dropped off on October 19, 1974. You'd think that was the end of the story, but no. It came roaring back in April 1975, riding the physical graffiti wave, before slipping out again that June. Then came another comeback in early 1976 as buzz grew around a new Zeppelin album. The record left the charts that October, only to return again in 1977 and once more in 1979, with In Through the Outdoors saving the record industry from a massive slump in sales. And yes, I have 69 copies of the album. Real momentum hit in the late 80s, when back catalog sales started to explode, pushing the album past 35 million copies worldwide. Decades later, Led Zeppelin IV remains indestructible, the eternal starting point for anyone discovering Zeppelin for the first time.
Put on side 1 of Led Zeppelin IV.
You can check my making of Led Zeppelin IV series for a deep dive and diary of events behind the construction of this rock and roll milestone.